Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Post. My next guest is the Director of Social Media Strategy at ZoecialMedia, one of the leading B2B organic social media agencies in Israel. She manages a team of account managers, mentors them to create high-quality social media content, and pushes them to think outside the post. When she's not busy analyzing data, reading over posts, and in meetings, you will find her with her husband and two sons, pretending to love football and abroad visiting her family. Without further ado, please welcome to the show, Nadine Synett. Nadine, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to be sitting here with you today. And I'm very excited to pick your brain and chat because when I first started my journey in B2B social, I started following ZoecialMedia and I love everything that you guys are doing. So I'm very excited to chat with you today and dive into all the amazing things that you are doing. But before we go there, I'll start you off with an easy one. Could you give our listeners a brief background on your professional journey and how you found yourself at ZoecialMedia?
Yes, so I think like a lot of social media managers or people who work in social media, it just like fell into my lap. It wasn't planned at all. I actually studied psychology in Germany, and I was sure I was going to become a psychotherapist. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with children and mothers, and that was like my passion. And then life happened, and I met my husband, and we got married, and we had a baby, and it was I moved to Israel, and then I started working actually for a nonprofit organization that was doing outreach on Twitter to their home thing they wanted to do is they wanted to change the opinions of people, what they were thinking about Israel, non-political. They wanted to change the way people thought about Israel. So we were reaching out on Twitter to influencers in their field. So it was medical professionals, it was authors, it was all kinds of people. And basically I spent most of my time just on Twitter and commenting and tweeting. And then Zoe, who is the owner of ZoecialMedia, worked in the same office space and she was looking to hire. So over lunch, she offered me a job and I started as a junior account manager. And and Zoecial grew. Like we did a huge jump over the last 2 years, and with that, I've grown in the company. So I went from a junior to a senior account manager and then to the director. So I stuck around and it was good.
Wow, amazing. I feel like I don't have a similar journey, but I feel when you say kind of just ended up and kind of fell into your lap, because I actually used to be a teacher and I have such a passion for teaching and I love the impact that you can have on someone's life. And I feel that now in social media, it's still kind of like you still are able to impact people's lives and their roles. So I definitely have that connection there. But for anyone that maybe doesn't know what ZoecialMedia is or what you guys do, could you just give us like a brief background on that as well?
Yeah, so ZoecialMedia is a creative, organic B2B tech social media agency. So we do everything from taking over companies' profiles, if it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to working with executives on their professional brand and helping them become thought leaders in their industry. And the interesting thing is that we do everything. We do from writing posts to creating the graphics, which I think is a very important thing, that we have an in-house creative design. Like we have designers, we have 3 designers working with us.
Oh.
So it helps. Like it's really like it takes it to the next level if you have designers on hand to like brainstorm ideas and come up with new campaigns and things like that.
Yeah. That's definitely such a nice thing to have because graphic design and video and all of those things fall under the umbrella of social. And I feel like there is kind of a stereotype or kind of a way of thinking where social media managers have to do everything from graphic design to writing the copy to doing the videos to analyzing all the data. So that is really nice to have. And I want to talk specifically about your role as the director of social strategy. I'm sure every single day is probably a little bit different in the world of social. Everything's constantly changing and moving so quickly. But for you, what does a typical day usually look like?
Yeah, so as you said, it's different every day, and I feel like every day I'm putting out fires is like a very big thing. Because I work with a team of people, I have obviously internal meetings. We don't actually call them meetings. We talk about we have a tendency to call everything meetings, and then we feel like we're just in meetings. So it's more like working time that we are on Zoom together, and we brainstorm ideas, and we come up with new campaigns, and just looking over banners and videos and what do you think about this and what do you think about that? Like that's a lot of my day.
Yeah.
And just being in meetings with clients, also going over their reports, and they have a new campaign coming up and they want to strategize about how we should go about it. And another client has a funding round, that they are announcing. We need to talk about that. Like there's always something going on.
Yeah.
So it's like you're putting on all these different hats all the time, and people are sometimes sick, and then I jump in and I help, do the day-to-day work. So it's like across the board, if it's creating QBR reports, and every day is different, and every day
Yeah.
is packed. It's always packed.
That's the beauty of it, though. You'll never be bored working in social media because it's constantly moving and changing. And I really want to talk about social strategy with you. And I think for me, when I first started in the B2B space, the word social strategy kind of intimidated me a little bit. And I would love to know for you, when you are creating social strategies, where do you start? Are there things that you're looking at before you even sit down to kind of write the strategy? Where is like your starting point, and what are the things you are doing beforehand?
So yeah, it's different with every client, obviously, and every platform. Like you're building a strategy for each different platform, and because we have clients from so many different industries. We have clients who are in the cyberspace, and then we have clients who talk to salespeople. So every industry is different, and as an agency, you have this challenge to basically go into the industry and not be an expert in it, but to learn as much as you can about it. So I think the main thing is always like you start with hearing first from the client, like who are they, what do they do, who's their audience, what are their main, what are they trying to do on the platform, like what are their goals, what are their marketing goals. And then it's creating a benchmark report and creating seeing what happened before social media came, what worked, what didn't work, because that is important, to see what, when they have a history. We have clients who we've started, a LinkedIn profile and a Twitter profile. So we're starting from scratch, and then, it's a lot of trial and error at the beginning, but, and looking at competitors. I think that's also a main thing. Like, what are the competitors doing? What are they talking about? And looking to the customers, we can get a list of customers, we can get a list of, we create a list of influencers. What is the industry talking about, so that we can then go back and say, okay, now we can create a content strategy, and we can create an engagement strategy, and all the different parts that are important for, the social strategy. It's always like this, it's a big word, but
Yeah.
it's when you have to break it down. You have to break it down. Like, this is LinkedIn, what should we do here? This is Twitter, what should we do there?
Yeah. Yeah. I think looking back, when I first started hearing the word social strategy, like I said, it sounds intimidating. But someone said to me, like, Olivia, it's just a plan. It's just how we're going to approach each channel. It's just a plan. So I love to get really specific on this show. So for anyone listening in, they can learn a few things and implement that into their own social practice. So I would love to know, when you are actually sitting down to write a strategy, how are you going about crafting the strategy? And you can get super specific if you have like a certain platform that you'd like to create your strategies on. So if someone's starting from scratch, how should they go about actually creating a strategy?
Okay, so I think for, let's take LinkedIn. as an example, because I think a lot of B2B tech companies are, their main focus is LinkedIn. Like we've seen that, Facebook is a little dead. We don't like saying it, but it's dead. And Instagram is very much has become an employer branding space. So if you're hiring, if you want to show the culture of your company, it's very much Instagram based. But LinkedIn is very much this place where where it's everything, where you're talking about your product and everything like that. So let's just take LinkedIn as the example. But so you have to break it down between like content strategy, engagement strategy, then like having a thought leadership program as well, and advocacy. Like advocacy is obviously part of the whole thing, but it should also be included. I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make are like, oh, I'm just going to put a post up and it's just going to work, and it's just everyone's going to see it and everyone's going to click and everyone's going to buy my product, but it doesn't work like that. So for the content strategy, what we've identified are 4 pillars of content. One is education. So we very much feel like you need to warm up your audience. You need to talk to them about what are the pain points that the industry are facing, what are the pain points that you are solving, and just educating them about it. Like we've had a client that work with their audience as salespeople, and they're changing the way salespeople put in all their information after a sales call into the CRM. And we have to talk about that. How much time do people actually spend selling, and how much time are they spending on administrative tasks? So there's the whole educating part and warming up the audience. And then there's validating. So validating that this is actually pain points. So we use articles for that, and, influencer blogs. And then we have company, which is anything to do with your company. So it's employer branding, it's bringing forward employees and their expertise, it's PRs and company news, and anything that makes, shows that you're more than just this big B2B or small B2B company. And then, of course, the solution. Let's talk about the solution that you're giving the audience. How are you solving their pain points? How are you different to your competitors? So that's, anything like book a demo and talking about the technology and talking about, it's a bit more technical and it can be boring, but there are always fun ways of doing it. And it's very important to showcase, like, how are you different from all the other, cyber companies, and how are you different from, I don't know, all the other startups that are out there. So that's just the content strategy. And from that, we say it's really important to keep those 4 pillars in mind when you're building out your cadence of posts. And, month for month, it will be different. Sometimes you have, events, and that takes a little bit over, but then the next month you should focus again on more educating. And then every time you're looking at the reports month over month, you can see what actually did well, what did not do well, what resonated with the audience, what not. And then you can build from there. Like, it's not like a fixed thing that you have to do now from now until next year. And then I think, you have to look at engagement strategy, which also impacts your content strategy, because once you're out there and you're listening to what people are saying, what the influencers are saying, what your audience is saying, what people in the industry are saying, it impacts your content strategy as well, because you have to fill in there. Like, one of the things we saw now with ChatGPT, everyone's talking about ChatGPT. Everyone wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
So for salespeople, it was a big thing, because they were like, how can we actually use it, rather than that it's going to take over our jobs, because that's always the fear, AI comes and takes over our jobs. How can we use it as a tool to help us with our sales calls and with our emails and this and that? So for this one client, we did a series of posts around it, and that's, you have to work with you have to be part of the trending things, like, what are people talking about? And it's also building a community and making sure that, you're not just putting out, but that you're there and having the conversations and reaching out and You know, if you're going to an event, then you should be looking who else is going to this event. Invite them to come to your booth. Like, don't expect people to just come to your booth because you put out a post, you know, 2 days ago about it. So there's that strategy. And then there's thought leadership. Like, one of the things we see is like, it's very people, you know, people to people. People want to speak to people. And, you know, if you think about big brands like Apple, you know, if you think of Apple, you think of Steve Jobs, you know, so it is important to have that face of the brand, you know, having executives. I don't like thought leadership as a word, but like showing their expertise, showing that they are experts in their field and building their professional brand. And that, you know, if people are listening to the person who's in the company and has something to say, it immediately also gives value to the company, and people start going to the company page and start looking them up. And it's like, it goes hand in hand. And I think especially if you're a small startup and you don't have any followers, the focus needs to be on the executives, because they're the ones who are out there and they're, you know, they're talking the talk, you know, and then the company will come with. And then advocacy is a really important thing as well. Like, just, you know, they're your free fans, you know, they're going to be advocating for you. They love working for you. They think obviously they hopefully love working for you, and hopefully love your product or what you're doing. So using them and utilizing them and educating them about why it's important for them as well to, you know, be present on social media is so important, and it has such a huge impact of what you're doing on your company page. So, you know, you have to build a strategy around it, you know, and you have to build a proper advocacy program and have the right tools, you know, and make it easy for them and incentivize it so that it's successful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you for walking through that. That is super helpful. And I have a question about when it comes to content strategy. I know you mentioned one of the pillars is your solution or the product you have. And I find a struggle for me is, of course, on social media, you want to build a community and build trust, and you never want to come out and just have your hard pitch or your sales pitch in a social post. It just doesn't feel authentic. It's not really human-like. It doesn't build community at all. So in your experience, how have you been able to, or if you have any tips on telling the story of your brand or your product in an authentic way and still building community at the same time? I feel like it can be challenging to share the main value point you're bringing to the table, but also do it in an authentic way on social. So do you have any tips or any successes in the past or examples of ways of doing this?
Yeah, so we hear a lot from clients, oh, this is a bit salesy, you know, we don't want to exactly say that. So one of the things that I feel like is a good way of doing it is actually showcasing your successes through your people. So having, you know, people go on, you know, people who feel comfortable, go on camera and say, like, I had a customer who came with this problem, and then we were able to help them to do X, Y, and Z, you know, like, them telling their successes, you know, telling the success through people comes across much less like this hard pitch, you know, and more that they're proud of it and this is something great. So, you know, case studies is a great way of doing it as well, you know, having the story of the customer, you know, the customer came, this was their problem, and then this is how we helped them and this is what we achieved. And like that, it's much less, you know, it's still braggy, but it's much less than, oh, you know, book a demo here, you know.
Yeah. It's more about showcasing the success through your customers instead of you just coming out and saying, this is why you should go with us. This is how we'll help you. So it's much more authentic in that way.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, what we also have to always remember, it's in the end, organic social media. So it's about brand awareness. So it also comes naturally sometimes, like not sometimes, it does that come naturally. Like once you know, like let's take Oktopost as an example. If I was just starting out as a social media manager in a company, but we weren't ready to make like the purchase and invest in a platform that we wanted to use to, you know, as a tool for posting and for analytics and advocacy, but I constantly would see you coming up in my profile, on LinkedIn. I would see your posts, I would see your your employees posting about it, and it would always be on top of mind. Like it would come naturally that then when I'm looking to make that investment and say, okay, I'm ready to invest in a tool and I want to take the next step, that I would look at Oktopost. It's just, it's not, there's no, for organic social media, there's no A to B, like just because, and I think that's often the issue, people are expecting from us when they come to us, where are my leads? Where are my leads? But it's not about leads. It's about the awareness, and it's being on top of mind, that in the end, they think of you when they are ready to make that purchase, when they are ready to invest, or if they are ready to, buy or whatever it is, that you're there, you're in their minds.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up because I couldn't agree more. And I think when you're in B2B, you are tasked with that delicate balance between content that builds trust, builds community, raises your brand awareness, but also creates leads. And at the end of the day, you have to balance which content you're putting out, because if you just want leads and you're just putting out webinars or other things where you have to fill out a form, it's not going to build trust. And like you said, putting out content that builds community and builds your awareness, at the end of the day, when someone is ready to buy, they'll think of you because they already have built up that trust. And we know everyone wants to buy from brands that they trust. And when you know someone or you have a connection with a person, you start to build trust with the brand they represent. So all of your employees' posts, all of the posts coming from the brand page, they're all kind of adding up over time. And then when your buyer is ready, they'll think of you. So I think that is so important that you highlighted that, because I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes when it comes to demand gen and social campaigns, it's kind of hard as a social media manager to say, like, it may not be a direct line to a lead, but these are the things that we have to do over time to increase our leads from social. So couldn't agree more.
It's really hard. I think it's very much about educating the clients about that, that it's not a direct lead. Like, if you want leads, you have to do paid, and and I think we also forget from our own, like the way we are on social media. I think that's what people forget as well, is like, how often do you click on those ads, even, the trousers that you see, like Instagram is always offering me like, Azos has this at the moment in special offer. And how often do I click on it and don't buy anything? And then, how often does it actually, or how long does it take for me to click until I get actually to the, to put everything in my basket? And then even then I don't check out, so I think we always forget about how we are ourselves on social media, and how long it actually takes us to actually make the purchase, and how much some, contributes to actually making that purchase.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of content and certain things like that, I know every social media manager or content marketer, we just want to know what content is working. And I feel like now it's a weird time in the world. There's a lot of uncertainty, and you never know when you're putting a piece of content out if it's going to perform. I mean, sometimes you maybe have an idea, but other times a piece of content might tank. So from your perspective, I know you have experience with a few different industries. So do you have certain buckets of content that always perform well?
Yes. I mean, there's no magic formula. I wish there was. And if you have one, let me know, because it's something that, it's all about trial and error and testing. But we do see that content where you're putting forward your employees and definitely across the board does better than like any blog that you can put out. So that's the one thing that we see. We do also see that like stats do really well. Like people love like infographics. And I think it's always, though I think it's also always the way you present things, like we had a cyber client come out with this report about that they had 0 false positives. And we could have put another post up saying, this institute found that our client had, that X, Y, and Z had 0 false positives. But what we did is we took it and we then said, okay, how much time are companies actually wasting on these false positives? And, then it was like an educational piece. This is how much people are wasting. And then the CTA was, click here because our clients have 0 false positives.
Yeah.
But, so it's very much about like how you present content. So I don't really have an answer, but I definitely see, like, I've done, this month was like hell of reporting because we had all the, last year, all the yearly reports to be done, and everyone wanted to know what worked 2022 and what should we do 2023. So one could see, if you're looking at the top posts, they're always with employees, it's always employee posts. It's always the, showing the culture of the company. And but also we've done a series of posts where, as I described, where we had employees come forward and we did like a little expert talk, and we talked about what they do, and how did they help their customers. Those did better than the static blog banner that we put out, because there was another blogged post.
Yeah, definitely. I see the same exact thing here at Oktopost. Our company culture campaign is continually our top performing campaign, and our recruitment campaign is also one of our top performing campaigns. And of course, they both have people in them at the end of the day. So when I am approaching content, I am always trying to think of ways to incorporate our people into whatever piece of content we're promoting, even if it is, for example, a product release. I'm always trying to flip it in a way where I'm like highlighting our developers, for example, and say, look at all of the amazing things that they're working on, because I know at the end of the day, that is what people are connecting with. So recently, I've been trying to do more company culture on our brand page and more content that has direct impact on our audience. So takeaways and things that they can use and implement into their role. And then on advocacy, that is where I'm starting to get more into the more technical conversations and things like that, because at the end of the day, people trust people. So I think it makes sense to leverage your people to talk about those more, not cold topics, but more maybe technical things that wouldn't feel the same coming from the brand page. So that's something that I've started doing recently, and we've seen a lot of success from it. But same boat here. Whenever we highlight our people, that is what always performs the best.
Yeah, I think what you said is really interesting, because I do think that one always has to remember, like, if you're talking to developers, for example, if your audience is developers, it makes sense for your developers to be talking about the technical stuff with the audience, because in the end, developers trust developers, and they have a whole different way of talking, and it's very technical, and I feel like I never understand what they're talking about, but so it does make sense that you in the end have your advocates talk about the more company technical things. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very much about testing and trying, and I think sometimes you can put out something and it did really well, and then you put it out again and it will tank. Like, it just sometimes the algorithm just screws.
Yeah, you never know. Well, we're nearing the end of the show here, and I have 2 more questions. The first one, I can't let you leave the show without asking you this, because of course you're working with so many clients, and historically, we know it's been challenging to measure the business value of social, and we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. But when it comes to metrics, are there a few metrics, or maybe 2 or 3, that you're looking at that demonstrate success, or are you kind of looking holistically at things? What are you kind of zeroing in on when it comes to measuring success?
Yeah, so I think success looks different with everyone. I feel like a lot of people focus on the followers. Like, how many followers do we have? How many new followers did we get this month? And I think people forget that the people who are following your company are your employees.
Yep.
People who want to work for you, like people who are looking for a new job will follow the company. And then it's, you know, friends and families and people who come like at the beginning, you know, who just started following you so that you get some followers. And it is important. Like followers are important. If someone's looking you up, they obviously want to see that you have some following. If you had like 3 followers, they wouldn't think that you're legitimate. But I feel like it's a vanity metrics, and people care too much about it. So one of the things we look at is like on LinkedIn is like profile visit. You know, how many people are coming to your profile because they've looked you up and they find, you know, they've seen your post and they've come to your profile and they find you interesting, or they've seen an ad and they've come to your profile. So, and like profile visits is one of the things we look at. And then obviously there's the impressions, engagement, and clicks. Clicks, I think, is very important because in the end, we do want to drive people back to your website. We do want people to go to your website. That's the end goal, that people go to your website and read about the blog or the white paper, or, you know, download the white paper or the ebook or whatever you're promoting. I think that what people focus too much on is the month over month, you know, like how many new followers did we get? How many more impressions? But what you want to see over 6 months is that there's been growth, you know? Did we grow are more people seeing our content? Are more people engaging with our content? Like, it's important to look at these things, like looking at engagements. Are people actually engaging with the content we're putting out? If not, then we're doing something wrong. So I think it's like holistically, you're looking at all these metrics, but I think that you always need to take it also with a pinch of salt. Like, there are some months we know things are not going to perform very well. December is definitely a month where people are not online. And if they are, they're not reading your ebook. You know, they want to, you know, watch the fun reels that, you know, everyone's decorating their Christmas trees. So I always say, let's look at 6 months and see how we've done, you know, and let's see that we've seen growth. I hate setting KPIs. I find that always so like suffocating like that, you know, because it's like, but we didn't hit the KPI this month. We didn't hit the KPI this month. And I'm like, yeah, but you've grown. You see that you've grown.
Yeah, it's hard because you also don't want, when you set a certain KPI, you don't want to focus too much on doing things that you maybe wouldn't usually do just to reach it. You always want to be authentic. And at the end of the day, if you see growth, that is successful, because social media, it's hard to grow. Everyone's on social media. There's a lot of noise. So at the end of the day, if you see growth in any area, I mean, that is success to me. So I totally agree. And I have one last question for you that I ask all of my guests. So what is one thing that you wish everyone knew about working in social media?
I've thought about this question a lot. And I think in the end, what I always came back to was that you have to stay on top of it the whole time. You know, whatever you know today could be thrown out of the window. And you have to learn something completely different. Like, the algorithm is changing all the time. New trends, new features, and you have to be willing to learn all these things on the fly. Like, there's a new feature on LinkedIn. There's no one going to teach me how to use it. Like, I have to go in and I have to learn how to use it. How can we use it for the clients? And then it's about testing, you know, testing if it's going to work. Some things worked, some didn't. Like the LinkedIn newsletter, it works for people, it doesn't work for companies. But no one told me that. Like, no one tells you that. You have to just be on top of it and learn and be out there and try things. And like, when Instagram came out with Reels, it was like a whole nother thing. You know, we had to start creating Reels and music and this, and how we're going to use it for B2B tech companies. And so it's interesting. And I think that's why people love social media also, because there's always something new and there's always something to learn. But you have to be willing and out there and, you know, not afraid to try it and fail. Like, it's also about failing and learning then from that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, all of these new things coming up, you have to learn and get behind them, or you're going to be left behind, because everyone else is going to be getting behind it and you're missing out. So I totally agree. And I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me here. I feel like I've learned so much. So thank you so much for joining me behind the post.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Me too.
Thank you.